All right, hello everybody. My name is Sarah Norris and I am the coordinator for the Career Services Office. Today for our career conversation, we are chatting with Nate Hasto. He is an alumni. He graduated back in 2014 with his degree in marketing. We're really excited to have him here today to talk about his career path and also some networking. So how are you today, Nate?
Doing awesome, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. We're glad to have you here. All right, so I've got a couple questions for you. So the first one up, just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'll try and give you the shorter version. So as you mentioned, graduated in 2014, got my degree in marketing, and really was always interested in, I guess the psychology of it was probably the most interesting part in my mind of why people buy and why people do business. So I felt like I got a really good perspective about that from the marketing program that they were at Brockport. Graduating, I actually changed career paths a little bit. I didn't end up going into marketing, but I found a really cool opportunity with a medical company called Quest Diagnostics when I graduated. And lo and behold, they wanted someone with a business degree that I had, and worked with them for about 2.5 years, and basically was doing outside sales and relationship building for their insurer services division. So covering half of New York State, worked with all your major insurance carriers, your banks, your brokerage firms, your financial advisors, and really enjoyed it. I didn't have to sit behind a desk, which is really what I was looking to avoid. Kind of a little bit of an antsy person. I always want to be doing something, and sitting at the desk has probably been the hardest part of this whole pandemic. By the way, for me, I'm like, man, I want to get out there again. But basically got into the career path that I'm not, in now, not intentionally. But I think that's something that I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the networking aspect of things, just keeping your mind open. But short version is I had about 5,000 financial advisors who were clients of mine at the time. And I was making good money in the career and just found that I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing with it. And I had taken some finance stuff, in school, but it was mostly corporate, focused stuff. And so I was looking to learn a lot about the personal finance aspect of it. Just frankly, couldn't seem to find an advisor that was really interested in the education portion of it. It felt kind of salesy, was at least my experience in it. And after kind of not having a great experience with that myself, ended up just finding that I was interested in it. I'd done so much work on it after the fact, after I kind of started working with someone, and learned a lot of things that I would have liked to know up front. But basically ended up leaving that sales career to start my own business, teaching people all the stuff that I spent almost 2 years learning about the personal finance world, and focusing in on the education aspect, which is what I was really interested in when I started looking initially. So that's the short version. If someone wants to know more, they can absolutely always reach out. I'm happy to share with anyone who's interested in listening.
Awesome. All right, well, that's a good segue into our next question. So how did you become the founder of your own company?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So as I was in the final months or so of my career with Quest, the writing was on the wall because they were changing how compensation was working for everyone. So I knew I didn't want to be there forever at that point, and I was starting to look for avenues to get into the finance world. I explored a ton of different ones, but what I kept coming back to was I wanted to have something that I had more control over. I felt like in the current role that I'd been in, I did have control over how hard I worked, but I didn't have control over just the change in the marketplace, which really caused a big decrease in pay for everyone who was in my role across the country. So I wanted to have more control, and I wanted to work with people in a non-quota focused way. Meaning that I didn't have to sell X number of whatever if it wasn't what people needed. So I ended up ultimately deciding to go independent, and associated with a firm, PFS Investments, that didn't impose any kind of quotas, and really kind of aligned well with what I believed that people needed, which was just the education, the information to make good decisions, and then someone to help them actually create a game plan from wherever they're starting. So that's how I decided to kind of go out on my own instead of working at one of the bigger firms that most people have heard of. So I won't drop the names here.
Awesome. All right. What is your favorite part of working where you do?
I think the impact that you can have on people is probably my favorite thing. I know that many people, when they think about working in finance, they may not think of that. And it's, believe it or not quite as math heavy as I thought it would be going in. Don't get me wrong, you need to know the numbers, but there are so many tools available out there that make that a lot simpler than you would imagine. Thank God we have all these advances in technology. But getting a chance to sit down with someone and completely opening their eyes to a new path, a new avenue, a way to accomplish the thing that they thought was impossible, is probably the thing that I enjoy most. And coaching other people is the other aspect of it. So both internally and externally.
Nice. So what is the most important thing that you've learned along your career path up to this point?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing that I've learned at this point is you can't judge yourself by the results alone. I think when I started out, it was difficult. And it's amazing how much you can get inside your own head if you don't see quick success on stuff. But just continuing to kind of trust the process. Any Bills fans out there you're probably tired of hearing that saying at this point, but trusting that you are investing in people, you're investing in yourself, and that it's going to pay off at the end was probably the hardest part. But it's been great in the past several years seeing all of those things that were done years ago that are still paying off now. Was the hardest thing to overcome, but probably also one of the most valuable things to realize.
Definitely a good thing to realize. How about, what advice would you give to anyone looking to work within the same field?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think you need to have proper expectations. So I think a lot of people get into finance because it sounds like you can make a lot of money, and full disclosure, you can. But I think that the hardest part about the finance industry is that you have to be in it for the long haul. So, for people getting in, I'm not going to discourage them to get in, but I will say, if you're going to take that step, be prepared to be in it for the long haul. Because if you're here to kind of try it out and then get out, in most circumstances, probably not going to really yield a lot of success for them. So, or money for that matter. So, being able to make a long-term positive impact, I think if you have the right mindset going in, that you're going to work on this, you're not going to quit, that you will have a high probability of being successful, making a big difference in people's lives.
That's certainly good to know, especially I feel like with the current climate of switching from thing to thing, it's nice to know that coming into this to be invested. That's definitely good to know.
Yep.
How would you describe like the perfect candidate for this career field? Are there certain things they need to know or do or anything along those lines?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for a lot of people, when they think about working in finance, they think they've got to have a finance degree. If anyone's been listening to the first half of this conversation, they know that you don't need to have a finance degree to work in finance. It doesn't hurt. But I think when it comes down to it, the types of people that we look for are people that are interested in spending time and communicating and teaching others. So even sometimes having a teaching background isn't a bad way to kind of get in. Being good at communicating, which that always takes a little bit of time. Some people are really natural communicators. Other people, they have to work into it. I would have put myself in the second boat there. I was not just naturally good at communicating. That took a bunch of work on my part. But I think just someone who has a strong ethical and moral compass is really the other thing that we look for. I just know from experience, unfortunately, that I can teach people all the stuff there is to know about finance. If I can learn it, other people can learn it as well. But I can't teach them how to have the right goals, the right motives. They have to kind of bring that being a good person, caring about other people to the table. That's not something that's a teachable thing from my side anyway. So that's what we look for when we're bringing people aboard.
All right. Is there anything you wish that someone had told you before you started this career path?
I think what I mentioned before, that hey, this is not this isn't going to be something where you're making $1 million overnight. Now, I still would have done it either way, and I didn't really do it for the money anyways. But I think just having a little bit more perspective on that would have been really nice coming in. So I'm hopeful that, anyone who considers doing something like this just is invested for the right reason. I think if you're not in it for the money's just kind of a perk of it, that you'll probably enjoy the journey a little bit more. So, fall in love with the process is really what I would say. Because I think when you fall in love with the process and you do it, progress is inevitable.
Love that advice. All right, so you've been in the professional field for a while now. Are there any quote unquote negative traits that you see in recent college graduates? I know negative isn't necessarily the nicest word, but things that you're like, maybe you guys want to reconsider what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this will actually pair nicely with the topic that we have today, but sometimes it feels like the personal connection in business as well as personal relationships has kind of started to dissipate a little bit from just, it seems like I'm noticing that in some of the younger people that I chat with. So, really putting a big focus back on creating real, genuine, ideally in-person relationships with people, not just from social media or online. I'm not going to knock online at all, actually, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few as well. But that real ability to have those interpersonal communication skills is something that seems like it may just need a little extra work. I think the positive of that is they bring a lot of other stuff to the table that I didn't have. So I don't have to teach them all this technical stuff. It's just the technical nature of communicating. So it's still technical training, but it's just in a different area. So I don't think it's a negative. I just think it's something to be aware of.
Certainly, that's definitely a great thing to point out. Is there anything that would surprise people about your daily work?
Yeah, I think the amount of time that we spend on the phone following up on stuff after we've agreed that, hey, this is something we want to accomplish is something that kind of surprises a lot of people. It really there's more if you can't do any paperwork of any kind, maybe not the right field. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't love paperwork, but I think it's worth it for the impact that we make on people's lives. So yeah, I spend a lot of time working on paperwork, dotting the I's, crossing the T's to make sure that everything's in alignment, ideally making things easy when I get together with people. But there is a ton of preparation that comes into this. And I think a lot of people think, oh, you just show up for the meeting. And it's like, I wish, I wish you could just show up for the meeting, but that's not how it works.
That would definitely be so much easier if you could just show up.
Yeah. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. So that's probably, the piece that surprises people most, I would say.
All right. Is there something that a person can do to set them apart from other candidates within this field?
Yeah, I think, just having that genuine care. I think a lot of people that I've talked with and interviewed in the past have come in with, good credentials as far as, hey, you got a finance degree. I've always had interest in money. And that's great. I think having those things makes this kind of a career path potentially more enjoyable for them. And that's a piece of it. But I would say that the even more important piece of it is that ability to connect with people. So that genuine care, that drive to make a difference for people. I think is the missing link for a lot of people coming in. They think all they've got to do is get a finance degree and then they'll have opportunity. And it's not to say they won't have chances, but if they can couple that with that genuine care for people and getting really good at communicating and asking good questions, that is the thing that'll take them wherever they want to go.
Definitely. All right, we're going back to Brockport here with a couple Brockport questions. I think you touched on this a little bit, but how did Brockport prepare you for where you are now?
Yeah, I think what I liked about my time at Brockport really was the experience that a lot of the professors had. So talking a little bit about the real world, and although I didn't go into marketing per se, I thought it was great that we had a bunch of opportunities to hear from people who had been in that field. And even though I decided to finish my degree in marketing, some people think that when you find out something's not for you, it's a bad thing. But I really kind of saw it as a blessing, saying, hey, look, I'm interested in this topic. I just don't know if it's the right fit for me personally. But I took a lot of stuff away from all the stuff that they talked about from real world application of this and realized, maybe that's not really where I want to be. But just seeing things through to the end is kind of the way that I've always tried to approach things. So I've appreciated their transparency, their knowledge and experience. And that was probably my biggest takeaway was, okay, this is interesting. I don't know if it's my passion, but it was great to spend time with people who were completely and totally passionate about it.
Definitely. We have a lot of professors on campus who are passionate about what they do, so that's a great thing.
Absolutely.
And my final question for you, what advice do you have for current Brockport students?
So actually, I think this is the perfect segue. So I really do believe, and I started networking when I was in college, and I think that if a student, especially in the professional realm, is not networking right now, they're doing themselves a disservice. So I think that's something they need to get out and do. I'm not going to steal too much of the stuff from my slides here, but that's exactly what I would tell them to do. They need to get out. They need to start building a professional network. If they don't have one yet, everyone's got to start somewhere. So that would be the first thing that I would do.
All right, and that is definitely a perfect segue into your presentation then.
All right, see if I've got these tools correct here. I think we're going to give it a go. All right, can you see that on your screen?
Yep, you are all set.
Wonderful. So I'll just run through this briefly. I'm not going to try and go insanely in depth here, but high level, I wanted to make sure that we could open this up for any questions. I'll try and answer the questions that I think that people would have, just to keep this thing concise here. But first thing, it's always about starting with the end in mind. What is networking, right? So action or process of interacting with others to exchange information, develop professional or social contact. What does that really mean? You need to build relationships. It's all about the relationships. And whether they're professional or casual, I think really they all interact well, because a person is they're not a different person when they're working than when they're not working. So I think there's so many different avenues that remain untapped for people here. First question that I think deserves answering is why should I bother starting? Why is networking going to be important? I think a lot of professionals dread the thought of networking, from what I've noticed anyways, especially people who aren't in some kind of sales or business development role. A lot of them feel like it's not something that's required of them, and they don't want to do it. I think the reason that most people feel that way, though, is because they've got this perception that networking is this formal thing. It's a bunch of awkward elevator pitches and people handing them business cards that they lose, and vice versa. So they don't feel like it's really worth the time. But I do really believe that the opportunities that you have are very tightly connected to the people that you know. And it's not because, hey, you get preferential treatment over someone, but if you think about it, it's all about someone being familiar with you. If you walked into a room and asked someone for help, but no one knows you in that room, you probably will find some good Samaritans, but it's much easier if you walk into a room of friends or acquaintances and you ask for help. They know who you are, they know what you're all about. So it really gives you a leg up in starting that conversation. This is totally true also. The more that you network, the more that you'll have fun doing it. And I can speak as an introvert here. It was extremely awkward when I started. I didn't really know what to do or how to start conversations well. But you learn from your mistakes. You figure out what works well. And I think, again, it's always more fun, especially in a small town like Rochester. You walk around it and you can see people that you know and you've developed good relationships with. Just being out and about is more fun at that point. And as I mentioned already, the opportunities that it can open from networking might be avenues that you never even considered. I know when I spoke earlier about the types of people that we look for, a lot of people who are going to school for education wouldn't even really consider normally a career in finance. But ultimately, what our job really is to teach people all about how money works so that they can make good decisions. Well, if our real goal is empowering people, I think that's one of the main reasons that a lot of people go into education is they love the idea of empowering, whether it's young or if you're in higher ed, more mature minds to get to the next level in whatever they want to achieve. The next piece is, how do I get started? Let's say that I've decided that it is important to begin networking. Where's the point that I should jump off here? First and foremost, I think it's fair to let people know that the start is always the hardest part. So don't feel bad if you feel like it's awkward and you're fumbling and you're falling all over yourself. Most people have a bunch of grace to give you, especially if you just let them know. Be honest. Hey, look, I'm just starting to do this, especially as a college student. I feel it's really important to develop meaningful relationships with people, and I'm just trying to. I would ask for help, frankly, is what I would do if I were in their shoes, and that's what I did. But you do have to act your way into feeling. You probably won't ever, especially if you're an introvert like I am, you're probably not ever going to feel like you want to do it. Those are the times that you really need to go ahead and do it anyways, because it really is going to be so important for your future. Don't be too hard on yourself when you're starting out. Like I mentioned, I've failed a lot at this. So I've also figured out the things that don't work, which I think is equally as valuable as figuring out the things that do work. But networking is a new skill. If you think of anything that you tried to do, the first time or two you picked it up, you probably weren't a natural. So don't be too hard on yourself as you'll learn something new. Networking events or social media, I think, is a great way to meet new people. I mentioned the thing that I've noticed about younger people as we've had conversations with recent college grads is many of them are very connected through social media. And I do think that that's a positive. It really just comes down to, can you convert a virtual relationship that you have with someone to a tangible relationship? So that's one thing that I think is just a little bit of a learned skill set, but it's really valuable when you have large networks of people, because you'll find people that are a big fan of what you do, whatever it is that you do, and they'll want to connect you with other people. So it doesn't have to be stuffy business networking events alone. One-on-ones, grabbing coffee, grabbing lunch, grabbing dinner, those are all fantastic ways that are a little bit more casual to meet people. And starting from social media is a great place. Just a couple examples here. I'm sure there's more that I did not include. LinkedIn, if you don't have an up-to-date LinkedIn, I think that that's probably doing yourself a disservice. I think most college courses for career prep are recommending, and even sometimes requiring students get LinkedIns. It's great to have a LinkedIn. It's important to be active on it. But you can do networking from Facebook. You can use Instagram. There's Meetup or Eventbrite if you're someone who prefers the in-person aspect of things, just to kind of start a conversation. But I'm sure I'm missing a ton of them. These are just a handful that I would say I use relatively regularly. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be at a business event. If you love kayaking and you want to get around people who also love kayaking because it's your favorite pastime and it keeps you, in shape and everything like that, talk to the people who are kayaking. You can go on like Facebook groups. I'm sure there's other stuff beyond Facebook groups. That's the one that's coming to mind right now. Get around people that like the stuff that you like, and don't be afraid to ask them what they do. You'd be surprised how many doors it opens by just having friendly conversation with people. Especially if if you and they seem to get along well, there's probably a reason that you should stay in touch. And it's good to know what people do. And lastly, I really think the reason that networking is so important is in any industry, people want to work with people that they'd like and trust. So having those common interests, those common belief systems, that, it's a do good for other people, make a positive difference. Assuming those really are your belief systems, it's a great way to open doors and find new opportunities, whether it's a new job, a promotion, if you are in some kind of business development role, new opportunities to help other companies that need your products or services. Really, really cool way to be able to just grow a network. I think the next question that I wanted to be able to answer was, who are the people that I should connect with? So if we've got the, what is it? Why should I do it? How should I start? Maybe the next question is, who are the people that I should be connecting with? Now, this is a little bit subjective. So take this for what it's worth. There's more to it than I can fit on one slide. But as I just mentioned before, I would look for people who have similar passions that you do, whether it's work or personal relationships, networking, both in both of those fields is really going to be incredibly important. You'll probably meet a bunch of people who will become great friends on top of it. It's always more fun to work with people that you like anyways. I think working and finding people who are in fields that you're interested in is a great place to start. I know when I started networking, I was looking for people who might be doing something that I could see myself doing, and asking them out to coffee, paying for their coffee. I know coffee's not cheap, guys, but you don't have to buy the $10 one. You could get a $5 coffee and them a $5 coffee, and not only that, but you end up in a situation where you walk away with a ton of information, a ton of knowledge, and probably someone that's going to be an advocate for you. People in your field of study. So if it's something that directly you see yourself doing or is in a complementary field, these are great people to reach out to and to have connections with. And don't forget the people that you can help. I think a lot of people look at networking like, what can I get out of this? But I can tell you firsthand what you'll find is that you will be significantly more successful, and you will actually get more if you go into it looking to give instead of to get. So finding people that you may be able to help make connections for. This you may not be able to do immediately, but I think if you go through the process and don't forget the people that you've talked with in the past, it's always great to be able to find other people that you can help connect that either have similar beliefs or could be complementary to one another. It's actually a super fun thing to do, I've found. And lastly, I think connecting with people who may have different viewpoints than you do is also extremely important. So don't just look for people who think and do the same things that you do. I think you're really limiting yourself. But be open to have your mind changed. Be open to hearing what other people think and understanding things from other people's perspective. That's one of the coolest things about networking, in my opinion, is having a ton of people who think completely differently than I do, who I can bounce ideas or thoughts or maybe things that I'm confused about off of. It's such a cool opportunity just to get a good perspective of what's really out there. The way that you think is not the only way that there is to think. When should you be networking? This is going to sound aggressive, always. And I don't mean that you should always be working. I think there is a balance that needs to be struck here. But I think when you start to get good at networking, it isn't like work. You're just talking to people who, I guess at the end of the day, strangers are potentially just friends you haven't met yet. And as I mentioned before, it's much more enjoyable working with people who you're friends with, who you have a good relationship with. So the key here is have fun creating the relationships, looking for ways to connect and help others make connections makes this fun, I think. And it's amazing just the dividends that it pays back by finding ways to help other people. Lastly, just to wrap up here, Harvey McKay said this. He said, "My golden rule in networking is simple: don't keep score." And I think this is just so powerful because it's not about, well, I introduced so-and-so to 10 people and they're making a big difference in whatever, his or hers business is, but they haven't connected me with anyone. I really just believe that it's all about, you want to sow good seeds, pay things forward with the right intentions. And you might be surprised where it comes from. It's probably not going to come from that same person that you just made 10 connections for that are making a big difference for their life, for their professional career. It's probably going to come from someone else. So, don't hold that over their head. You can't control what those people are doing. You can control what you do 100% of the time. So making sure that you just do it from the right place is one of the keys in networking, I think. And it's part of the joy of it is you just never know what's going to happen in a good way. And I think that's where I wanted to wrap up here. So I'm not throwing way too much out at people at this point. Let's see if I can do a stop share here. There we go. And I'm back.
All right, perfect, Nate. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead, end the recording, and then we'll open it up to our question section. So I'll just do the general thank you for coming, Nate. We're really glad that we had this time with you. And I'm going to just stop that recording now.